How do you hold people accountable and not be an asshole? Hey, Gabriel Klingman here, and that is the question that we are diving into today. So, this is an idea that has really kind of seeped into management and leadership, and it is terrifying, to be completely honest. I understand where it comes from, but it's terrifying. And it's this idea that if you want to be someone that other people follow, that other people want to follow, and if you want to actively get results, right, then you need to not hold that standard. So the idea came from a good place, right? The idea came from as a knee-jerk reaction to people always holding standard way too much. Like, this is it, there is no exceptions, this is the rule, right? And as a knee-jerk reaction to that, and to like this very autocratic style of leadership, which I would not consider leadership. It's just abusing your power, and like, it's terrible. And that, as a reaction to that, we have swung in the opposite direction to a point where if you want to get something done, and if you have a standard that you want to uphold, you internally, you are faced with this dilemma. Do I hold this standard, or do I let the team get away with it for the sake of the relationship, for the sake of future results, right? This is something, it's a very dangerous road, and it's a dichotomy because you have to live in between here, but it's a very dangerous road to go down either. If you only hold this standard all the time, then frankly you become an asshole. You become a jerk, and no one wants to actually put in work to help you because you don't treat them like a human. You treat them, if you hold the standard with no exception, you treat them as if they are a machine. Nothing will kill motivation or morale quite like being treated like a machine. If you don't believe me, start calling one of your best friends by a number. Pick a number. Don't call them their name. Pick a number. Okay? This one thing, do it. If you can last a week and without them getting upset at you, I will be shocked. I've never seen it last more than a few days. Never. The reason is because innately we know we're human. We know we are unique individuals, and to be called by a number is to like challenge our humanity. And it's the same thing. We know we're a unique individual, so to always hold the standard no matter what, no exceptions, is almost, it's interpreted as denying our humanity, right? So that's one side. You go to the other side, where the other side is just as bad. It's letting anything go. It's not holding that standard because we'll do it for the relationship, right? We'll do it to maintain the relationship. But we don't want to do it because we're looking for future results, right? Those are the things we typically tell ourselves. And I've been in that boat. Don't get me wrong. I've been a people pleaser. That's how I started in my leadership career, was as a huge people pleaser. So like, I definitely fall into this category, as naturally that's where I tend to. But one thing I learned is you do not get results if you let the standard slide, right? If I tell people that, you know what, it's fine, like, yes, this is the standard, but I'm gonna let you get away with it this time. What I learned is people don't work according to your standard. They work according to the lowest standard that you will allow. Let me say that again. People don't work according to the standard. They work according to the lowest level that you will allow. And so when you're always letting things slide, what you're communicating is, yeah, this may be the standard, but you know what? This is what I actually accept. And so this is where people are going to start to show up. And then what happens? Well, if this was the standard and they got away with this, now this is the standard. So if this is the standard, they're going to drop down to here, right? And it's just going to keep going. And you will never get results. Could you imagine, just for a second here, could you imagine if you were a airplane, if you were a pilot instructor, right? And you had a pilot, right? You're teaching him how to fly. You're doing this test flight, right? Here's a plane. And all of a sudden the pilot was like, oh, that looks really cool down there. I want to get a closer look. Boom, flies down only a couple 100 feet above the ground. Kind of does this, looking around, and says, okay, that's really cool. Flies back up. What is your reaction? If you fall into this camp, right? If you're like, okay, well, I don't want to challenge people because I don't want them to resent me. I don't want them to resent the job. I want them to be motivated. I want to keep the company culture. These are all things that go through our head, right? So if we don't challenge and hold that standard, can you imagine what will happen? What happens is that pilot, he's like, oh, yeah, my instructor didn't say anything when I flew down there. Sweet. So now that I have a plane full of people, I can just fly down there. That's no problem. And you're endangering every single passenger's life at that point, right? As an instructor, if you let that slide, you are potentially endangering an entire plane full of passengers, every single person's life. Now, in management, we don't necessarily deal with life or death situations. Oftentimes, we do deal with careers, right? If we don't hold a standard, if we just let things slide, then we're not setting our employees up for success, not only within the company, but also outside of the company, because we're not challenging them to be better. But I digress. That's a video for another time. How do you get results without being an asshole? How do you get results without letting everything slide? We live between these two worlds. Now, I firmly believe that the answer to this is actually much simpler than people think. People tend to overcomplicate things. They always want the new, latest, greatest, complicated answer. And I'm here to tell you that the latest and greatest is actually the first. The latest and greatest is the first. It's the thing that's most natural to us. So let me explain what this is. If you want to get results without being an asshole, simply give compliments, right? Have a compliment ratio. My former, one of my greatest influences when it comes to management and leadership, Laura Stacchino, she had a very strong line. She would verbally communicate this. She's like, I will hold this standard. This is the standard. And if you don't meet this, you are fired. It's very simple. Every employee knew exactly what to expect. This was it. At the same time, she poured so much of her heart and energy into her employees. She mentored every single employee as long as they were working for her. I worked under her for years, and that was the main reason why she poured so much into me. And yes, this was the standard, and she pushed us to always be better. Every store we worked at, we were one of the top selling in our region. We always met our numbers and blew past any goal at corporate sit down. We were always one of the top. And that was because she made us hold these standards. But the reason why we kept doing it, the reason why we didn't view that as being an asshole, is because she cared. She would always compliment. She would verbally say, I have a rule. For every one critique I give you, for every one time I critique you, I give you at least 2 compliments. That simple. Whether that compliment is, hey, look, you did X, Y, and Z right. Or, hey, you met this standard. Or, oh, I just saw how you interacted with so-and-so. That was amazing. Look at the way you diffused that situation. Beautiful. Whatever it is, you're having a 2-to-1 ratio of compliment to critique. That simple. If you come onto the other side, right, if your tendency is naturally to be more people pleaser, which is where I tend to fall, if you are much more of, oh, let's just let them get away with it for the sake of the culture, for the sake of the team camaraderie, morale, all that jazz, then having that 2-to-1 ratio allows you to still increase that morale. You still feel connected because I'm still showing you that you are doing such a good job because employees are working their damn ass off. And so you're still recognizing that and acknowledging that, but now you're also holding them to a higher standard. Because if you really care about your employees, this is something I wasn't going to get into this video, but we're going to do it. If you really care about your employees, then you will hold them to a high standard, right? By letting the standard slide, you're actually communicating, I don't care enough about you to hold this standard. It's like when a parent lets their child get away with everything. What happens? The child becomes a spoiled brat. That's just life. And the same thing happens at work. If you don't hold people to a standard, they won't hold themselves to that standard. And what happens? They will personally start to decline. So by holding them to this standard at work, you are giving them the tools that they need to hold themselves to a high standard. I hope that helps you so that you can live between the two. You don't have to be some autocratic asshole, and you don't have to be a people pleaser, and you can live and still get results right down the middle line. This is what's helped me. I really hope it helps you.